What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm here to bring you the Season 3, Episode 11 review of The Walking Dead entitled, I Ain't a Judas. Now, let me apologize right now for everybody who's watching this review, because this video is probably going to be pretty long. I'm almost certain it'll be longer even than my last episode review, which was about 29 minutes long, because there are some issues that I must address. I must get this off of my chest right now. Some things I just have to address, and basically I'm about to go ham. I'm basically about to go straight up ham, and just so you guys know, I am the nerd nigga. I take that moniker seriously. I take it very seriously. It's not just a joke, not something I do for fun or for laughs. I'm the nerd nigga. I'm Uber Hikari, the aka the nerd nigga. No frills, just the analysis. That's why you watch me. You watch me for my analysis. Now, this means that I'm a reviewer first and a fan second. I love this show. I absolutely love this show. But that doesn't mean that because I love this show that it's immune to criticism or somehow above criticism, because I do analysis. That's what I do. If you want to watch somebody praise the show irrespective of what they think, click off this video, go watch another review, because that's not what I do. Now, with that being said, quite frankly, I am disgusted with this episode. Absolutely disgusted with this episode. This is the worst episode of The Walking Dead I've ever seen, for several reasons. And let's get right into it. First of all, a lot of you have been mentioning that since I've read the comic books that I've been sort of, maybe I'm unfairly comparing the comic book and the TV show, because I talk about the comic book so much. Let me just get this out the way right now. I am not a purist. I don't believe that there needs to be a one-to-one correspondence between the adaptation and the source material. I don't believe that. Now, there are some fans of the comic books. I'm not one of them, but there are some fans of the comic books who tend to treat them as if they're the Bible, or there's some sacred holy text, and that any deviation from the comic books and the adapted material, i.e. the TV show, is akin to blasphemy. There are some fans who feel that way. I'm not one of those fans. However, I do believe that overall, the comic book is better than the TV show. Hands down. No comparison, no argument, no debate. Period. The comic books better than the TV show. That's just true. However, it's also true that there are some things that the TV show undoubtedly does better than the comic books. Just to give you one example, the characterization of Shane in the comic books, not very good. Not good. What do I mean? Not very good. It's pretty much non-existent. The characterization of Shane in the TV show, excellent. Absolutely excellent. Superb. Absolutely excellent. And in fact, not just the characterization of Shane, but the search for Sophia arc and the characterization that enabled, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And the search for Sophia arc, if you could call it an arc, it's not even in the comic books. That never happens in the comic book. Sophia never dies in the comic books. There was never a search for her in the comic books. Nothing like that ever happened in the comic books. And I think I'm actually in the minority when it comes to that arc, because when that arc was going on, there were a lot of fans who said it was slow, that it was too prolonged, that they were dragging it out. And I was one of the main ones saying, listen, I don't really care about the action in the series. I understand this is a zombie horror TV show, but I don't really care about the action if the characterization continues to be this good. Now, you can go back and check those episodes, because at first, or my reviews of those episodes, because at first I was right along with them saying, you know what, maybe they're dragging this out too much. I'm not really sure if they should do this. And then when I saw how good the characterization was during those episodes, I said it doesn't even matter. So you can go back and check. You can check the videotapes for that evidence. Now, sometimes I will compare the TV show and the comic books, and that's necessary. And it's necessary, I think, for somewhat of an obvious reason. Obviously, there are differences between the TV show and the comic books. There are different actions, different events, different occurrences, and once you create a difference between the source material and the adapted material, you necessarily change the context. Here's what I mean. When you change the context of something, when you change how an event happens or you create a new character, you create a new context for the narrative. And by changing the context of the narrative and the adapted material, that means you give new meaning and new significance to the actions, events, occurrences in the adapted material. And one example that I gave of this was in my last episode review, where I said that Lori doesn't die the same way in the comic books as she does in the TV show. So it completely changes the nature of her death, it changes the meaning of her death, and it changes the significance of her death with respect to the progression of the narrative and the themes of the narrative. So, as a reviewer, having read the source material, I now have to navigate those differences, and sometimes it will be necessary for me to create those type of comparisons in order to work out for myself how the meaning or significance of an event in the TV series has changed because it occurred differently in the comic book. So let's just get that out the way. That's the first point. Second point, the governor is a flat out shitty character in the TV show. He's just a flat out shitty character. His motivations aren't clear, his objectives aren't clear, his goals aren't clear, and what's really irking me about the character is that his thematic purpose is not clear. It's not clear what work the governor's character does for the narrative. It's not clear what themes are involved in his characterization and how he helps to clarify the themes of the narrative. That's why I said in my last episode review that the governor as a character is an enigma to me. He doesn't make sense. He's simply we simply don't understand what his narrative purpose is and what his purpose is with respect to the themes of the narrative. I don't know how I'm supposed to interpret him. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to interpret his motivations, his goals, or what he does. He's an enigma to me. He's a complete mystery. Now, some people in the comment section of my last episode review questioned this. They said, well, isn't it a good thing that the governor isn't just this black and white character, that he has some depth or complexity, if you will? And my response would be that you can't have depth. And yes, I'm putting that in quotation marks because I'm not even sure that the governor as a character has any character complexity or depth. But you can't have depth, character depth, at the expense of clarity. So as long as it's not clear what his characterization, how his characterization is important to the narrative, with specifically with respect to the themes of the narrative, that's not good. You can have the most complex character you want in a story, but if it's not clear what narrative function that character plays, you will have a shitty character because the character will be mysterious to the reader or the viewer. That's just how narratives function. Now, in the comic books, it's very clear what the characterization of the governor is for. It's very clear what thematic role he serves and what his function in the narrative is. It's very clear that he is a villain, and not just a villain, he is a psychopath, a sociopath. He's evil. It's very clear what narrative purpose his character serves in the comic books. His villainy serves a very important thematic purpose in the comic books. It's plain as day. Can't get any clearer in the comic books. In the TV show, this isn't clear at all. He's clearly not a villain. And this is despite whatever the intentions of the writers may be. Because we remember that whole subplot about him killing the people in the army or the National Guard or what have you. But even then, that wasn't an overtly villainous act. Why? Because you could argue that he did that because he didn't know what kind of people these were, that they had weapons, that they could have been a threat to Woodbury, and that it was necessary for him to obtain their resources to continue to help the people of Woodbury. So that wasn't even an overtly villainous act. And we don't even get the sense that the governor did that simply because he was a psychopath or he was a sociopath or he had some sort of messiah complex. That's not clear at all in in the TV show. And you could argue that he's a sympathetic character because he's been put into a situation of moral uncertainty and that he has to act in a way that's best suited for the prosperity of Woodbury. So not even his killing of the people in the army or the National Guard is an overtly villainous act. Although I'm assuming that that's what the writers want the viewers to assume coming away from that subplot. So as far as I'm concerned, the governor hasn't done anything villainous, overtly evil. Nothing really at all. At best, he's just some generic antagonist. In the TV show, the governor is a generic antagonist. In the comic books, he serves a very, very important thematic purpose with respect to the narrative. The most important thing when it comes to characterization is this: the type of characters that will be necessary for a story are predicated on the type of story that you want to tell and the genre within which your story operates. The Walking Dead is a post apocalyptic zombie horror show. That's essentially what The Walking Dead is in a nutshell. The governor is supposed to be evil. He's supposed to be a villain. Why? Because this is a horror. He's supposed to inspire fear, horror, terror. We're supposed to be scared. That we should be unsettled by his villainy. I mean, it's a horror show. I mean, that's what you would expect from a horror show. So, I mean, it's not even as if my expectations are not reasonable. This is a post apocalyptic zombie horror show. The governor's supposed to be evil because it's a horror show. That's just, otherwise, the show is only nominally a horror show. As the zombies continue to recede and the conflicts of the show focus more and more on humans versus humans, then the governor has to fulfill that role of the villain to bring the horror of the show to the forefront. Otherwise, it's just a regular genre. Otherwise, it's just a regular drama, and the governor is reduced to a generic antagonist in any generic drama show. Now, if the governor is not an overtly evil villain, then he serves no thematic purpose, and his characterization is inconsistent with the zombie horror genre. He makes no sense as a character, and that's pretty much the main reason why I said in my last episode review that his characterization is simply an enigma to me. Now, let's talk about the characterization of females in The Walking Dead. And in this episode particularly, I'm absolutely disgusted by the writing of the female characters in this show. Disgusted. I mean, on a visceral level. Really disgusted. It seems to me that the identity of not even most, almost all of the leading female characters are based on their sexuality, i.e., who they happen to be fucking at that time. Their identity is almost always tied to a male character in this way, and that's just sickening to me. Their relationships, the for the female characters, their relationships with the male characters almost always overshadows every other aspect of their identity as characters. And that's a problem. That's a serious problem. It's 2013. Female characters shouldn't be defined by who they're fucking. That should just not be the case. And it's true for Maggie's characterization, which is directly tied to Glenn. It was true for Laura's characterization, which was tied to Shane and Rick, and it's true of Andrea's characterization, who was with Shane and now the governor. And to a certain extent, it's true of Carol's characterization because a major part of her identity as a female character is her relationship with Daryl. And it's a shame that I have to say this, but it must be said. Women should have an established independent identity as characters. Again, it's 2013. They should have aspects of their characterization and their identity that do not rely solely on men. And those aspects of their characterization should be explored and brought to the forefront. I mean, it's 2013. Women aren't objects anymore. The writers of this show should get with the program. They should really get with the program. And I question whether or not the writers of the show realize this. Maybe they're doing this subconsciously. I don't know. But I really question whether or not the writers realize what they're doing and whether or not they're even capable of writing female characters in a way that doesn't have their sexuality or their relationships with men completely dominate their characterization. That's just disgusting to me. And I'll give you some perfect examples. I've already alluded to them. Lori, Andrea, and like I said, to a certain extent, Maggie, although I want to focus specifically on Lori and Andrea. Lori's claim to infamy, not her claim to fame, her claim to infamy was being caught in the middle of a love triangle between Shane and Rick. And her character and her characterization suffered tremendously for this. I mean, Lori was the most hated and or, well, she was the most hated or disliked, if hate is too much of a strong word, disliked character on the show. The overwhelming consensus for Lori's character was that she was a shitty mom and or she was a conniving, manipulative slut. And her characterization and her character was so bad that not even the way she died could redeem her in the eyes of some viewers. If you have a female character who dies while giving birth, and there's some people who cheer that on, then you know you fucked up when it comes to female characterization. You know you've messed up pretty badly. She was terribly written, and she wasn't like that in the comic books. I don't want people to get that impression. She was not like that at all in the comic books. This is only for the TV show. Only for the TV show. Now let's talk about Andrea. Andrea is pretty much a reincarnation of Lori, which is sickening. Because I mean, I can understand. Maybe I could have let it slide if it was just one female character, but two, and they're bad for almost the exact same reasons. Then I have to start questioning the writing of the show. Andrea's claim to infamy was fucking Shane and now fucking the governor. And those aspects of her identity and character dominate every other aspect of her character and characterization. They overwhelm it, overshadow it, dominate, whatever the word you want to use. And she's even worse than Lori. Especially in this episode. The end of this episode just was, ugh. I mean, every woman who was watching that should be flat out disgusted by how Andrea was portrayed in this episode. I mean, even after she went to Rick's group and found out the truth about the governor, even after Michonne, her supposed friend, and we'll get into her friend in a moment, warned her about the governor again and again and again, even after catching the governor in what she claims to be lies in this episode. Remember, she says, "I'm sick of the lies." And even after seeing everything that's happening in Woodbury, this is again Andrea's words. She goes to Martinez and says oh no, not Martinez, Milton. I believe that's the scientist's name. The governor's creating child soldiers. So even after all of this, she goes right back to the governor at the end of the episode and fucks him. Now how sick is that? Really? Because we all know that when a woman wants some dick, she goes crazy. We all know that when females get in love, they can't be reasoned with. They're not logical. They're completely emotional. Do any of these sexist stereotypes ring a bell? Does any of this ring a bell? Because these are the same sexist stereotypes that have been promulgated for centuries about women, especially in the Western world. Let me make that clear. In the Western world, especially. At this point, her characterization has been completely overshadowed by her relationship with the governor. And she's drumming up more and more and more dislike in the same vein as Lori. Like I said, she's a reincarnated version of Lori. That's essentially what Andrea is. It just, the way she's being written makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. Now let's talk about the scene with Andrea and Carol in this episode. Because this is just more evidence of how terrible her character, how terribly her character is written. Gotta use an adverb there. Andrea was talking to Carol about how Shane died. And at one point in the conversation, Carol says, well, Shane loved Lori. And you can tell that Andrea is visibly upset about this, about hearing this from Carol. And Andrea's response right after this, if I'm not mistaken, was, Rick's become cold and unsteady. Wait, what? Do you see the discontinuity in that conversation? So Carol says Shane loved Lori. Then Andrea's immediate response was, Rick's become cold and unsteady. Well, how are those two things connected at all? And obviously it's supposed to be implied, it's heavily implied for the viewers to pick this up, that the reason why she takes that shot at Rick, even though it's partially true because of Rick's hallucinations, she didn't say it because it was true. She said it because she was angry that Shane didn't love her and that Rick killed Shane. Why the writers feel the need to have a character like Andrea completely overshadowed by her relationship with men is beyond me. Especially considering the fact that in the comic books, Andrea is an independent, savvy, smart woman, and she even retains some of those qualities in the TV show, but they're completely dominated and overshadowed by her relationship with men. Doesn't make sense to me at all. And not only that, not just with Shane and the governor, but Andrea's characterization was pretty much poorly written even from the beginning. Because if you go back and remember, think about her relationship with Dale, which was a completely paternalistic relationship. Remember when Andrea was going to kill herself at the CDC and Dale basically forced her to keep living because Dale said, well, if you don't come out of the CDC, then I'm going to stay here and my death will be on your conscience. That's paternalism. Flat out. Easily identifiable paternalism. Because Dale wanted to be the kindly older father figure for Andrea. So he took it upon himself to force her hand. That's paternalism. As if Andrea was irrational or unreasonable. As if people who can't make the rational decision to kill themselves. Oh, you can't have Andrea do that. Can't have that little girl do that. Gotta have this father figure mentor her about the values of preserving life. That's paternalism, ladies and gentlemen. Flat out. Paternalism. Dale, Shane, and the governor make Andrea's character reducible to sexist female archetypes. It's disgusting and it's sickening. I don't like it. Now let's talk about black characters. Because I already told you I was gonna go ham if this continued. Cause yeah, I gotta go ham now. Right. So in this episode, Andrea finally, I guess you could say, escapes from Woodbury, and she makes her way to the prison to talk to Rick and the group about potentially negotiating some sort of peace between Rick's group at the prison and the governor of Woodbury. But when she arrives, everybody gives her the cold shoulder, and she says something about this. She says, "How I used to be a part of this group. How did I become the oddball out?" Something to that effect. And Andrea then turns to Michonne and she says, "What did you tell them about me?" And then Michonne says nothing. This was one of the when Michonne said nothing. This was one of the 15 words that she got in this episode. I just want you to realize that. But Michonne says nothing, and then Andrea responds, "You poisoned them against me." Again, this is just another sexist female stereotype. Of course, because she just sounded like a ditz, like a dumb blonde. You poisoned them against me. And then Michonne responds, "I want you to see how you chose a warm bed over your friend." Basically, that's a euphemism for you chose some dick over me. That's for people who couldn't see through that. That was a euphemism for you chose some dick over me. That's basically what that was. So now let me address this thing about Michonne uh, saying you chose a warm bed over your friend. Bullshit alert. But bullshit alert. My antenna started raising, and then I said, "Friend? When were Andrea and Michonne ever friends? They weren't friends. Their relationship was never established as friends. First, Michonne isn't even a real character. She's a cardboard cutout. Just like I said in my last episode review, she is basically T-Dog 2.0. She has no backstory. She has no characterization. She has no character development. She's completely stoic. She hardly says anything. She stands in a corner, and the only time she does say anything is when it's necessary for her to help out the other white protagonist. She's damn near a magical Negro. For those of you who aren't familiar with the archetype of the magical Negro in narratives, head on over, pause this video, head on over to Wikipedia, type in magical Negro, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Now, she isn't quite a magical Negro, but she's pretty damn close. She's pretty close. Michonne is the typical subservient negress. That's what she is, the typical subservient negress. As someone else described her, she's basically a black maid with a sword. That's pretty much what Michonne is. Think about it. The first time we saw Michonne, what was she doing? Being subservient. She was saving Andrea's life. Second time we saw her, she was being a subservient negress. What was she doing? She was getting medicine for Andrea. What was she doing? She was taking care of Andrea while she was sick. She's a subservient negress, basically a maid. That's basically what she was. And it's also heavily implied that Michonne was the one keeping Andrea alive during the time skip. It's heavily implied. It was never overtly stated, but it's heavily implied given the fact that the first time we see her, she's out there getting medicine and taking care of Andrea. And not only that, she tried to save Andrea from the governor. What does that mean? She's playing the role of the subservient negress. Gotta save Massa. Massa is some danger. You can't go with this boy here. Not with the governor. He's dangerous, Massa. And even when Andrea turns against Michonne, Michonne is still playing the role of the subservient negress. You chose a warm bed over your friend. Michonne should have said, that showed me that you weren't my friend, not that you chose somebody over your friend. Andrea never reciprocated any of the respect that Michonne showed her. Never. Friendships are based on reciprocity, mutual interaction between people who are on equal footing. Michonne was never displayed, was never portrayed as being on equal footing with Andrea because she was always showed as being subservient, always in a role of helping Andrea, looking out for Andrea, taking care of Andrea. She was the subservient negress. So basically what I'm saying is this. You can't be friends with a cardboard cutout. Because that's what Michonne is. She's a cardboard cutout. She's not a real character. You can't be friends with someone who's always depicted as being subservient to you, as being below you. There was never any reciprocity between Michonne and Andrea. Every scene with Michonne and Andrea depicted Michonne as being subservient, or in some sense being Andrea's house nigger. Because that's what Michonne was. Stoic, never talking, hardly saying anything, always helping Andrea. Again, a maid with a katana. And I'm absolutely sick of the repeated marginalization of African American characters who do nothing but aid the white protagonist, aka Michonne, aka T-Dog. It's highly offensive and it seems ridiculously anachronistic for 2013. Because that's what T-Dog was. T-Dog was basically a butler. He was killed. Tiny in the prison was disposable. He was killed. Andrea was Tomas's underling. He was killed. Oscar died because of Rick's hallucinating. He was killed. And who remembers those Hispanic gangbangers from season 1? I do. I remember them. Don't think I forgot about that. Yeah, I remember those Hispanic gangbangers from season 1. Yeah, I remember them. And now we have Michonne and Tyrese. And let's talk about Tyrese. I don't know what the hell's going on with Tyrese. He's another one. No characterization, no character development, no backstory. Just a mute, cardboard cutout African American. And the woman who, it's not even clear what their relationship is. That's how bad it is for the African American. You don't even know what their relationship is to each other. In the comic books, that was his daughter, but it's not clear if that's his daughter or not. I don't know. Maybe it is. I think that's his daughter. They don't. Now that I think about it, they don't seem to have a romantic relationship. So yeah, that probably is his daughter. But she's even worse than Tyrese. She gets no play, none. So we find out in this episode that Tyrese was in fact kicked out of the prison, and now he's teamed up with the governor. What the fuck is this? I mean, this is so it's almost like a parody of the comic books. I mean, there's adapting the source material, and then there's just doing some off the wall crazy shit. This is so ridiculously different from the comic books. It makes no sense. Tyrese is now teaming up inadvertently, albeit, but he's basically teamed up with the governor now. In the comic books, Tyrese was Rick's second in command. In the comic books, Tyrese had characterization, he had character development, he had backstory, he had a relationship with his daughter, he had relationships with other characters, he had relationships with Carol, with Michonne, and in the TV show, he has none of this. Nothing. In the comic books, Tyrese was basically in Daryl's role. So this is completely disgusting and unacceptable for the African American characters. You have the repeated marginalization of African American characters, and not just the repeated marginalization, but you actually take them from the roles that they had in the comic books and reduce them to marginalization in the TV show and treat them as disposable characters. That's just wow. So basically, in to get on with everything else that happened in this episode was basically Andrea leaves Woodbury and goes to the prison, and with the obvious goal of becoming an intermediary between the two factions in an attempt to negotiate peace between Rick's group and the governor, like I said before. And obviously Rick's group wants no part of this. Rick even flat out states, we're going to kill the governor. He's got to go. He's going to die. Also in this episode, the whole bit with Meryl was just retarded. Made absolutely no sense. So they have Merle. He's in the prison. He's in the jail cell. Presumably he's back with the group. And I don't understand what the hell's going on here. And Daryl even says to Glenn at one point, he's staying here, so just get used to it. And I'm like, what? So Merle just stays because Daryl says so? You're just going to keep around the dangerous psychopath? And the scene with Herschel and Merle was so ridiculous. So retarded. Herschel is talking to Merle and he starts quoting some Bible verses, and then Merle completes the quotes from the Bible verses. And here's the best part. Merle then goes on to say the one Woodbury, something to the effect of Woodbury had a pretty good library. That was the best part about Woodbury that I missed. Wait, what? They now have Merle quoting Bible verses and talking about libraries? Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. Seriously. Also, the one part that I did like about this episode, though, was that was Rick, and the fact that Rick's role as the leader of the group is now sort of uncertain and question. And I like the direction that the TV show is going in, because this didn't happen in the comic books, and the comic books never explored his perhaps his well, they did explore it, but not in this way, not this directly, and not in this way. And I like the direction that the TV show is taking this in, because Herschel flat out says to Rick, "You're losing it. You said this wasn't a democracy. You said this was basically a dictatorship. Now it's time for you to deliver on your promise." And I thought it was very ironic that Rick now has to basically eat his words. And I'm interested to see how his characterization progresses, and how he recovers from this, because you don't just stop hallucinating. That's just not possible. So there has to be some deep emotional resolution with respect to the characterization of Rick. And I'm really interested to see how the writers achieve this going forward throughout this season in the upcoming episodes. And what was interesting also was that even Carl was starting to question Rick's ability to lead the group. And I honestly don't like Carl at all in the TV show, but he does have a point. So yeah, that was pretty much it. Sorry I had to go ham on this episode, but it was absolutely necessary. It was necessary because this was a shit episode. This was an absolute shit episode. The next episode, from the previews, they look like it could be just a filler episode, some padding, but I'm not too sure. But hopefully the next episode is well, shit. The next episode can't be worse than this one, so it must be better. So I'm looking forward to the next episode. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.